Picture this: you are a woman in 1487 and you have just done something that someone in power does not like. Maybe you argued with your husband. Maybe you knew herbal medicine and a neighbor child died of fever. Maybe you simply refused a man advances. Within hours, you are dragged from your home by armed men. But you are not being taken to a prison cell or even to a quick execution. You are being taken to a device specifically engineered to destroy your body in ways that will make every other woman in your community too terrified to ever speak up, stand out, or step out of line. And here is what will haunt you most. The people who designed these instruments of torture sat down and carefully calculated exactly how to maximize your suffering, how to make your pain last as long as possible, and how to ensure that your destruction would serve as entertainment and education for crowds of your neighbors. What you are about to discover is not just about medieval cruelty or ancient barbarism. This is about systematic oppression disguised as justice, about how entire societies weaponized women's bodies to maintain power, and about horrors so deliberate and calculated that authorities tried to erase them from history. Because even centuries later, the truth is too damning. Stay with me because the story of how humanity turned women into public spectacles of suffering reveals something terrifying about how oppression actually works and why we cannot afford to forget these lessons. Let us start with the most iconic form of execution in history. One so embedded in our cultural memory that we still use the phrase witch hunt today without fully understanding the horror it represents. Burning at the stake was not just a death sentence. It was a carefully orchestrated public performance designed to maximize both the victim's suffering and the crowd terror. During the Middle Ages and well into the early modern period, this execution method primarily targeted women accused of witchcraft, heresy, or what authorities vaguely called moral transgressions, which could mean anything from adultery to simply being too independent. Women were disproportionately selected for this ultimate penalty, especially during times of social crisis. When plagues swept through communities, when harvests failed, when anything went wrong that people could not explain, someone needed to be blamed. And that someone was almost always a woman, particularly women who were old, poor, unmarried, or possessed knowledge that threatened male authority like midwives and healers. The process was designed for maximum psychological torture before the physical burning even began. The accused would be shackled to a wooden post in the town square, surrounded by bundles of wood and kindling while crowds gathered. Sometimes thousands of people would attend, treating the execution like a festival. The fire would not be lit all at once. Often executioners would start small fires around the edges, letting the heat and smoke build gradually. The victim would watch the flames creep closer, knowing exactly what was about to happen, experiencing every second of anticipatory terror. When the fire finally reached her body, death was not instant. Smoke inhalation might bring merciful unconsciousness before the flames actually consumed flesh, but that depended on wind direction and how the fire was built. Some victims remained conscious and screaming for minutes that must have felt like hours. The most famous victim of burning was Joan of Arc, the young French military leader who was condemned for heresy in 1431 at age 19. Jeanne Massue recorded her final request as the flames rose around her. "Hold the cross high so I may see it through the fire." Authorities often claimed that burning cleansed the soul or protected the community from evil, but that was always a lie. This was never about spiritual purification. It was a tool of power, a way to eliminate anyone, especially women, who dared to challenge authority. The fire became a weapon of fear and control, a symbol of institutionalized misogyny that still echoes through history. But burning was not the only method used to silence women. Some punishments were more intimate, more humiliating, crafted not to kill but to crush dignity so completely that death might have seemed merciful. One of the clearest examples was the scold bridle, also known as the brank, a device that revealed how deeply patriarchal societies feared a woman's voice. This iron cage encased the entire head, with a sharp metal plate forced into the mouth to press down the tongue and make speech physically impossible. Many versions included spikes that pierced the tongue if the woman attempted to speak, turning communication into an act of self-inflicted agony. The bridle was used mostly in early modern England and Scotland against women labeled as scolds, a term with no legal definition. It simply meant any woman considered too talkative, too argumentative, or too rebellious by male authorities. Every so-called crime was connected to speech, and the goal was not discipline but domination. A woman forced into the bridal suffered not only silence but public humiliation. Some versions featured grotesque decorations like horns or animal ears designed to mock her as she was paraded through the streets. Historian William Harrison called it a tool for correcting unruly tongues, revealing the paternalistic cruelty behind its use. Worse still was the ducking stool, which added the real threat of death. Used in medieval England and colonial America, the woman was strapped into a large wooden chair attached to a long arm over a river or pond. Before crowds of spectators, she was plunged underwater again and again, each time held under until she nearly drowned. Hypothermia, violent injuries, and drowning were common, and many victims later died from infection or pneumonia. The spectacle was public, theatrical degradation. Communities gathered to jeer, and even children were brought to watch as a warning of what happened to women who did not obey. And then came the most gender-specific torture of all, the breast ripper, also called the iron spider. Its sharp metal claws were designed to tear a woman's breasts from her body, either heated red-hot or used cold depending on how long the torturer wanted her to survive. This punishment was reserved primarily for women accused of adultery, heresy, witchcraft, or having children outside marriage. The breast ripper was not just excruciatingly painful. It was designed to destroy the physical symbols of motherhood and femininity, to literally rip away the parts of a woman's body that represented nurturing and life-giving. The mutilation was always performed publicly, creating a spectacle meant to shame the victim and terrorize any woman watching into absolute compliance with social rules. Many victims died from blood loss or infection. Those who survived were left permanently disfigured, marked for life as women who had transgressed, unable to hide their crimes or reintegrate into society. The message was unmistakable. Women's bodies existed at the pleasure of patriarchal authority and could be destroyed if women dared to claim autonomy over their own sexuality, spirituality, or choices. This was not random violence. It was calculated destruction designed to enforce a specific social order. But the breast ripper was not even the most invasive device created to torture women. That distinction belongs to several instruments that were designed to destroy women internally in ways that the crowd could not see, but that left permanent, devastating damage. The Spanish donkey, called the wooden horse, was a torture device featuring a sharp triangular wooden beam. The victim, frequently a woman accused of heresy, witchcraft, or sexual transgressions during the Spanish Inquisition, would be forced to straddle this beam while heavy weights were attached to her ankles. The weights pulled downward, driving the sharp edge of the beam deeper into her body, causing severe lacerations to the most sensitive areas and often permanent damage to reproductive organs and the ability to walk. This torture could last for hours or even days with weights gradually increased. The resulting injuries frequently led to infections that killed victims slowly and agonizingly after the official torture ended. Then there was the pear of anguish, a device so violating that even describing its use feels like participating in the horror. This instrument was shaped like a metal pear segmented into sections that could be expanded using a screw mechanism. It would be inserted into the victim's mouth, vagina, or anus depending on the accused crime. Mouth for heresy or blasphemy. Other orifices for sexual transgressions. Grim remeners,